Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. This is Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, and today we've got a special mini series for you entitled Up and Running with Red Hat Satellite. This is episode 2, talking about adding systems and packages to Red Hat Satellite. Joining me for this session is a very special friend of mine, Mr. Richard Rios.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation again, Eric. I meant to ask you, I'm sure the title was bantered around for this series. How did you guys end up with this name?
For Up and Running?
Yeah.
I think the short version is that we wanted to go from. I know as a systems administrator that's played with different technologies, it's easy to get something installed, and then you log into a console and go,
Yeah.
I have a console, says it works.
Yeah.
I got to log in, and then now what? So
What do we do
the
now?
idea behind the idea is we wanted to, in like 4 or 5 sessions, be able to get someone from over that hurdle of I've got something installed, it's not doing anything, but it's installed, to where they can actually accomplish a task.
Yeah, make it useful. No, great.
So yeah, episode 1, if you missed it, was all about installing Red Hat Satellite. It's been a huge hit on YouTube. We've got over 600 views and something like 30 likes or something. So, oh yeah,
700.
nice. My goodness, yeah, it's.
I'm shocked.
I was mostly shocked that we were able to get Red Hat Satellite installed live on the air in less than an hour.
Yeah.
So today we're going to pick up where we left off. Although sadly, Rios, this morning, while running through all my commands to make sure everything worked, my home lab developed a DNS issue, which it's never DNS except it's always DNS. So my home lab is not cooperating, so I had to spin up a lab environment. But I'm kind of glad it happened, because I'm really excited to share that we, as of last week, now have a full-blown Red Hat Satellites workshop. So if you're familiar with our self-paced labs at lab.redhat.com, they're usually 10 to 15 minutes. This one is like 2 hours, and it takes you through some of the basics, some of the configuration. So don't tell Matthew, but I'm actually borrowing his workshop today to get access to satellite and a couple of RHEL systems. So hopefully everything will still work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great setup. You've got a satellite box, you've got a couple of RHEL 9 hosts, instructions on the right, console on the left, and a link to the satellite console. I ran through it myself last week preparing for the install episode. It's a great workshop. Huge shout out and thank you to Matthew Yee for setting that up.
I have used it multiple times since it was created. It has been a godsend, because when I want to walk through something with a customer or show them a concept, it is just available. It was so easy to spin up and just go through the whole process. So kudos.
And our hope for this mini-series, last PSA, I promise we'll get into the meat of the episode. But
Yeah.
if you look up there, there's a QR code. This one works. I tested it the other day. All you haters on YouTube, join our Discord. We've got a growing community of folks. We're up to about 140. My hope is that a group of you will, now that we've got this satellite basics lab, will go through this process with us. Almost like being back in college, where you're working on a lab together. So each week we're going to add more and more complexity to our topics. Today we'll see how far we get, but next episode will actually be in 2 weeks. I'm taking next week off. I'm exhausted and my health is not what it should be, so I'm taking some time off to recover before I cough up a lung live on air, which might be entertaining but not good for me.
It's August. I mean, we're just following the lead from Europe. Should be on vacation.
Well, we're in what we call faux fall, where the temperature dropped like 20 degrees, and then by this weekend it's going to be near 100 again. So it's no wonder that I can't.
Not in Texas.
That's fair.
Not in Texas.
All right, so
it's still triple digits here.
Oof, no fun.
Yeah.
All right, so last we left off, we talked about how to install some of the system requirements, some of the pitfalls of trying to set up Red Hat Satellite. But it's actually fairly straightforward if you follow the guide, and you can follow along with us. Just a number of install commands, a couple of really long ones. But when all's said and done, you end up with a Red Hat Satellite system that is up and running and ready
Yeah.
to go. And so that's where we're going to pick up.
So one thing I would add to that that we didn't mention during the installation is this. So we did the installation, and as you mentioned, that very long command. You cannot treat your satellite server like you would just any regular old RHEL. As in, if you want to do updates to satellite and the RHEL itself, you're using that series of commands inside of it. As in, you're telling it, oh, I'm doing an upgrade, I'm doing an update. And because that mechanism is what also unlocks the version, so you can then update the OS itself, so it can then take the newer components for satellite. That's not really talked about too much, but it's just an FYI. So I remember somebody asking, I kept running DNF or Yum, and it's just not updating. I don't know. That's why.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we mentioned this at the very end of the last episode, but at the very end of the installation, there's actually a line of text, and it's colored, that says, by the way, all packages are now locked. So only when you run satellite in that sort of maintenance mode can you do any of the usual systems administratory type maintenance tasks. So don't expect to think of your satellite server as more of a utility, as more of an appliance than a traditional server.
Yeah. That's my last PSA for the installation and maintenance part. Let's roll forward.
Probably won't be our last, but we'll try.
Yeah, true.
All right, so let's dive back into our console here. This is pretty much where we left off last time. I was able to get logged into a satellite server. We fixed the SSL issue in my browser before the show, so we were able to log in successfully. And so now this is that moment. Like, I've got to tell you, I've installed OpenShift like a dozen times, and I've gotten to this point where it's like, I have the console. Nothing's red, nothing's flashing at me. Now what I do? So with Red Hat Satellite, that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we can start registering systems and deploying packages and doing system role-based configurations, probably be best if we had something to actually action on our servers. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with creating some content on our system. Before we do that, as a prereq to that, I'm going to ask the Rich explain SCA, Simple Content Access.
Well, how much time we got? So when you think of simple content access, in the past, it was you were setting some limits, as in you could only activate systems that have subscriptions, whereas SCA kind of flips that upside down, in which you have a certain number you run, but you don't have a limit that you're not able to instantiate a new one, which gives you that flexibility. But then you're shifting that mindset of, how many do I have? You are deploying as needed, but you keeping track of what you're consuming. It's trying to simplify the whole deployment process, especially for organizations that are deploying and destroying systems, especially in their dev environment or in a cloud environment. It does simplify that process without having to create a new instance to a specific subscription, then removing that subscription so you can reuse it, because that innately baked in limit is no longer there. You have your number that you consume, and as needed, you can also acquire some more.
Yeah, and my buddy Rich Dorito likes to call it ending up with a degree in subscription management. And it's one of those deals where it's like, is this something we want our systems administrators to have to fight with, to go in and manage individual entitlements, to apply entitlements to get certain repositories enabled on your system, or do we want you to just go out and manage your systems?
Yes.
So simple content access is a way to do that. It really takes away a lot of the drudgery of managing subscriptions and entitlements for our RHEL systems. Now, any new satellite installs, any new customer portal accounts will by default have SCA already enabled.
Correct.
However, if you're joining us and you have and you've just taken over management of, say, a satellite system, you may want to make sure that it's enabled. And to do that, once you're logged into the satellite console, you want to go to Administer and then go under Organizations. And this mini series, Rich, we're working for Acme Org. So over here, if you look for simple content access, you notice that we've already got a check mark. So it is enabled, mostly because this was installed just a few hours ago.
It really does simplify things, though, because I can't tell you the number of conversations that people are trying to deploy, trying to move fast, and having to hit that pause button because, our account's not right. I need to administer. I decommissioned 3 servers, but I have not put them back into circulation. This allows them to move forward. Well, mind you, you're still managing your inventory of what you have, what you're consuming, of course. But we've removed as much friction as we can to make it simple.
So now, while simple content access helps this a lot, there's still a couple of manual steps we've got to take before we can start downloading content. And the first thing we need to do is we basically need to take a handful of subscriptions and provide it to our satellite server. And to do that, we have to create what's called a manifest. And so we're actually going to jump out of the satellite console and go to the hybrid cloud console, otherwise known as Red Hat Insights. And we're going to go ahead and create a new manifest. So I'm going to go to console.redhat.com. This is the RHEL dashboard. And then under services, and then subscriptions. That should have been easy to remember. And then over to manifests. I kind of stuttered because usually what I'll do is just come up here to the search box and start typing in manifests, which brings you right to it. So as you can see, I've got one created already. This is actually applied in my home lab. I took some of my individual developer subscription boxes and created a manifest around that. You can once you've got that created, you just export it. It'll basically compile a file that you'll then download.
There's a caveat to bear in mind.
Yes,
you only
please.
want to include what you know you're going to use, not too much, not too little. So what do I say that? For example, one of the subscriptions you have available is the satellite infrastructure subscription, which is for your satellite server and your capsule. And by default, you get 50 instances of that. Do not put all 50 instances in your manifest, ladies and gentlemen, please. If you have one satellite server and you think I might have a capsule, you add that. One of the reasons why I stress that is if you have a system that's set up to automatically attach and grab subscription for itself as needed, it'll grab the first subscription it comes across that even closely matches what it's looking for. And the satellite infrastructure subscription does have RHEL included. So a RHEL system, by mistake, might grab your infrastructure subscription. So if you put 50, you'll have 50 systems using satellite subscriptions, which is not what they're there for. So you want to add what you need. In some instances, I've even suggested creating a secondary manifest to just hold all the satellite infrastructure subscriptions separately so they're not grabbed by mistake.
That's great.
But you would add the RHELs that you need. Go ahead.
Yeah, right on. And so now that we've got our manifest exported, it'll download as basically a zip file here, and that'll download to my local machine, which then we can jump back to satellites and apply it. Goodness. And to do that, we'll want to go to content. We'll go into, I believe it's Lifecycle. Let me check my notes. content subscriptions
Subscription.
right there at the top. And then we are going to
Manage manifest.
wait for it to load. And we're going to add a subscription. And so you can see that this is obviously a work account because I don't have that many subscriptions in my own. And so we've got developer for wonder if our team realizes we have 3 of those applied. But anyway, so we've got this set up already. We can see some of the details. We've got satellite infrastructure subscription. We've got regular subscriptions as well. We can see how many entitlements there are. We can see how many we've got consumed. We don't have any hosts just yet, so of course our consumption is going to be 0. Okay. All right. So we've got our manifest. And next thing on our list is we need to go and actually create some repositories, or more accurately define some repositories. So we're going to go to Red Hat repos, and that'll give us about 296 repositories. How about we narrow that down and just look at...
It helps.
Yeah, a little bit. That'll cut it down to just the bare essentials. So you can see we've got some of the RHEL 7s, we've got RHEL 8 and RHEL 9. We've got the satellite client 6, which we'll talk about.
Definitely want that.
Yeah. So because Matthew Yee is awesome, we've already got a bunch of these that have been configured. Goodness. So we've got app streams and base OS for RHEL 8, the same for RHEL 9. Then some of the capsule packages for 6.15. And then this client is what allows you to interact with your endpoints, your RHEL clients back to satellite. So there's one for 8, one for 9. So because all these are already configured, what I thought we might do, Rich, is add a custom repository.
Okay. No, that's perfect. Now, one thing to always bear in mind, you see how it's being very specific. It's saying maintenance for 6.15 for satellite. Every time you do an upgrade, you want to look for the newer version and transition to that version as well. Sometimes we forget.
And adding a new repository to this list is pretty easy. Just grab the drop down. Interesting. It's super easy, except when it's not working. Okay. I can show you this through a custom repository. The fun of doing live streams. All right. So one of the most common repositories that I get asked about is EPEL. There's tons of others, like SAP's got their own repository. If you're like me and you use RHEL systems at home, there's a repository for installing Plex, all sorts of third-party repositories for any number of solutions.
Little things like that.
Definitely. So EPEL is probably the one I get asked about the most. So let's go ahead and configure a custom repository. But to do that, we need to define the GPG key first. So we're going to jump over here under content. We'll jump into content credentials. We don't have any right now because we haven't really configured any of the repositories yet. Right. So I'm going to let's do EPEL 9. So let's be really specific here and call it EPEL 9.
Yeah, very straightforward.
Simple is always better. Trying to outsmart yourself, not a good plan. Yeah. So then if you go out to one of the mirrors, you can grab the GPG key for EPEL 9, and we're going to save that. So now credentials have been... sorry, Rich, if you're trying to talk, my streaming window is hidden behind my demo. So.
No worries.
All right, so we've got our GPG configured. Now let's go and let's create the custom repository. So we'll want to go still under content. We're going to go to products. Notice we've already got satellite capsule. We've already got RHEL for x86-64. We're going to create a new product. We'll give this one a name, EPEL 9. And then We've already defined our GPG key, so we just select that from the dropdown. We don't need to worry about SSL. Now, sync plans. Sync plans are really helpful. Depending on your use case, you may want to sync something every 6 hours, or maybe a couple of times a day, on a weekly or daily basis. So Apple, I don't really want to have to. I'm managing an enterprise operating system, an enterprise fleet of servers. I don't necessarily want to have patches available every single day. So for sake of example, let's just do let's call it Sunday, weekly, and
for sure.
what we'll do is we'll select the interval. We'll do weekly, starting. Actually, if we start it today, it'll kick in on Sunday. And then let's say 1 a.m. So what this means is every Sunday at 1 a.m. Actually, if I want it to be Sunday, I should select Sunday. Yeah. There we go. So what this plan does is any product that we apply this to will do a repository sync out to the internet every week on Sunday morning at 1 a.m. So we're going to go ahead and save that. Now that sync plan will be available later on when, say, we want to sync our RHEL 8 repositories, or if we want to create a new sync plan and maybe we want to pull down RHEL 9 packages every morning. Basically, go ahead and just create that sync plan. Pretty straightforward. So go ahead and save that product. Now we need to actually create the repository itself. I want to be really specific with my naming, so we'll call it Apple 9 x86 64, because what we're going to do here in a minute is we're going to limit the packages we're going to sync to by architecture. So we can come down here and we can sync Docker files here or Podman files. Hopefully you're using Podman. We can do Ansible collections, but more than likely, and particularly in the case of Apple, we want to do a yum as our type. So here I mentioned we're going to limit it to x86-64. And then we need the upstream URL. This is where does Apple itself live? So I'm going to grab the Apple 9 everything URL and plug that into upstream. Some repositories may have credentials that you have to put in. Apple doesn't. And for now, we'll just go ahead and accept the defaults, except for our GPG key. We wanted to find that Apple 9 key that we had and save it. Now, our satellite server is aware of and can communicate with the Apple 9 repository out on the Fedora project website. So we're going to select that repository, and we're going to go ahead and click Sync Now. The nice thing is, once you click that button, it'll run in the background, so you don't have to wait on it.
The next thing is you can also do it as an ad hoc, and you can monitor the progress of it, if you so please, under the sync status section.
And you can get more details and let you know if there's any errors, or let you know how long it's been running. So if it's been running for 6 days, you might want to look to see if something broke.
Yes. A few minutes. Well, depending on your connection.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got an Apple repository. Why don't we check on the sync status of our Red Hat repositories as well? Because this is where my notes are going to differ from the... All right, so if we expand all, you notice that we've already got syncs have already completed for capsule repositories, for our basic OS repositories, and for our satellite client 6 repositories. We've already got... we already had files. We've already had all that data synced.
Yeah. The nice thing about it also is you can always click on the upper right-hand corner just to display the ones that are active. That way you can simplify your screen. So, you know, that's what you truly care about right now. What's active? What's the process? So
for sure.
There are a few minutes to go.
Yep. Luckily, we don't have to wait on Apple.
Nope, we do not.
We don't have to vamp while Satellite installs this week. So now we're starting to sync all these packages down to our satellite system, and that's sort of the crux of what Satellite was originally designed to do. Of course, in the coming episodes, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the cooler features, like creating basically jobs that can apply system roles to your system. But for now, we need to start being able to deploy packages to our hosts. But before we start registering our hosts, there's one more thing we need to do. And this is where you can get yourself into a lot of trouble by overthinking things. And that is creating a lifecycle, creating a lifecycle environment. So we're going to keep moving down the sidebar here, and we'll jump into lifecycle and lifecycle environments.
So one thing that happens by default, all content that is hosted on Satellite server is available in the library section. So that's where all the packages are going to reside. As you can see, we have, 79,866 packages. Just a few.
Yeah, a couple of dozen.
Yes. And I've actually seen organizations where they just wanted single content and they did not want to filter it. You could literally pull a package directly from the library, but that's bypassing or not having a lifecycle management activity take place. So why don't we go ahead and do that?
And I think that really takes away from a lot of the power that Satellite offers.
Oh, absolutely.
And once we create once we add a couple of stops on our path, we'll explain why. So let's go ahead and create a new environment path. We're going to give it a name. To make life easy, let's just have two. We'll have dev, and we'll give a super detailed description. This will be all of our non-production systems.
Perfect.
And then let's go ahead and create our second environment here, which, go figure, which would be production. Yeah. Who knew? Well, so we've got non-production and production.
There's another way you could also do it. As you can see, they're separate. You could add to the one that says dev and have next to it add a production to it, so they lead to each other.
I thought that was on the content views.
There's
getting ahead of myself.
As I say, there's so many different ways to do it. It can be done exactly the way you described it.
Actually, I think I like that. I like that approach better. Yeah, like all things Linux, there's multiple ways to do this, but Rios is right. If we do it this way, we can actually build a timeline.
Yes.
So it's much more visual. It's easier to follow this way.
Get promoted. They go to the next environment. Yeah.
All right. So
and you
now
can have multiple of these as well.
So maybe you've got a software as a service.
Yeah, there you go.
And so now you can have the same package and multiple different streams, if you will, different paths. And we can talk about promoting content here in just a second. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, and think of it this way: you can also have a life cycle for your web servers, a life cycle for your database servers, for your email, all the different environments or different lines of. I mean, the limit is really your imagination and how much time do you want your satellite server to process all the changes. So you want to keep it simple because you can get really complicated, but you really truly want to keep it as simple as possible.
For sure.
I'm an engineer, so I like to get creative, but at the end of the day, I want it to work.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and create a content view. And this is where all these different pieces will start to come together. So my clients in this lab are RHEL 9 based, so we'll go ahead and create a RHEL 9 content view. Rich, would you typically select solve dependencies, or do you leave that unchecked?
I will check that till the cows come home.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and create our content view, except we got an empty error. That's always great. When in doubt, click it again.
Yeah. Try it again.
No. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
All right.
My session expired. Oh no. Should have been good for 2 hours.
Okay.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
It's quite all right. We should be able to get back to where we were fairly quick. But the biggest thing about being able to do that is the fact that once you create that content view, you can then associate it to multiple lifecycle environments. And then you can start versioning the content as it can be consumed by your hosts. Let's see. Let's see how far do we need to start on this session. Hopefully, I know is it spawning a new instance by chance?
It is, and it's going to take about 4 minutes to do that. So
Yes, that's okay.
let's see what state my home lab is in. We may be able to pick the example up there.
That's the one thing that that people who are new to satellite is understanding that its true mission is to become the single source of truth for your organization as far as your RHEL content, right? So you have one place to get the versions that have been approved for all the hosts to consume. And via both the lifecycle management and the content view, you're then creating really it's like a subscription basically of what you want those hosts to consume. And the beautiful thing about that is even if somebody were to physically go to that host and type yums or DNF install or upgrade, they would not be able to install a package if the package was not available within the content view. So if you filtered out that they can only install the basic packages in HTTPD and that's it, they would not be able to install any other package outside of that. So you can now have very tight controls of the actual binaries that are being installed, the version of those binaries. You can go as far as a specific release date of a binary, which really becomes important, especially when you're dealing with has it gone through testing? Has it been validated and approved to go into production? So you could actually set up filters to certain dates. Any content post this date do not allow it to go to production, for example, because it hasn't been fully tested. And then you begin testing on the next iteration. So all those things are baked in. Where in the past, with the prior version of Satellite, with Satellite 5, you achieved that through your methodology. There wasn't an actual mechanism within Satellite to do that for you. You had to do it yourself and keep track of it and make sure your team was the same page of what the standards, what the approach was to achieve that. So that being said, what state are we in now?
With that
Hey,
being
look
said,
at that.
I've very quickly pulled up my satellite server here in the home lab. My DNS issues aside, we should at least be able to create a content view.
Awesome.
May not be able to register hosts, but hey, we can at least finish our example here while the
One step at a time.
Instruct lab comes back online.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and create a content view, and that'll help us explain what it's for. Let's go ahead and create that view. It works.
Woo!
My home lab didn't expire. That's good. So this view obviously is brand new, so we don't have any repositories added to it. Let's go ahead and show repositories. And what you'll see is that I've got some RPMs for 8, some for 9. Although my example was going to be based on RHEL 9, so let's do this. Let's delete our RHEL 8 content view. I don't want to do all that. I'm going to recreate you, I promise.
And there it goes.
That's always
Don't
fun.
worry about 8. Let's just focus on 9.
Except I don't have a repositories for 9.
Ah, well, that should be pretty easy to just have. Right.
Let's see. I'm trying to think what would be quicker to run back through everything we just did in Instruct, or probably just run back through this real quick. Yeah. We spent a lot of time talking about Apple. All right, so since I'm doing this on air, I'll walk you through what all I'm troubleshooting here. I've got Apple 8 configured. I've got my manifest imported for my developer for individuals. I go over to Red Hat repositories. I've got stuff for 7 and 8. Now I'm going to narrow down my list even further for, let's just cut it down to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9. Mm-hmm. I need my base operating system packages.
And upstream.
It's just what I was going to show you was that, see, you can add repositories by minor version, by architecture. It's taking a very long time to add that.
I have seen organizations that instead of doing just the RHEL 9, they'll very specifically say, well, our company standard, we're doing 9.2. And then they're going to skip to 9.2. They're going to go to 9.4. So they don't include the other ones. So once again, you cannot install what you can't see. Or what's not
exactly. And in fact, that's why content views are so aptly named.
Yes. It's very simple, but very powerful.
See, if I pull this out to another window, I don't think it'll confuse everybody. Well, that's loading for whatever reason.
Yeah. Let's see. I bet you the disk I/O is going bonkers.
Well, fortunately, I don't hear the discs. They're across the hall.
Okay.
And when it really spins up, I can hear it.
Yeah, over the years, is having a nice high IOP disks for your VARs directory, where the majority of the content for satellite resides, can really improve the performance and responsiveness. Both the database and the content itself, which takes quite a bit of disk space if you select everything under the sun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm actually kind of doing this really quick on the side here as my lab environment is back up. Okay. Well, that's kind of funny. All right. So like we just tried a couple of times, we're going to once again try to create a DEDCOM content view.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. So we're going to show repos.
There we go.
I wonder if maybe I should cut the last 10 minutes of this out, because this is fun. All right, so we're focused back on RHEL 9. So I want the base OS and the AppStream repositories. Definitely want those. And then probably going to want to get that client 6 for RHEL 9 repository as well. I'm going to go ahead and add that.
So while we're adding that, so Carlos Porter asked a question. When new repositories is added, all the packages from it are synced once you do your sync. So what happens when you remove said repository? Do you know?
Sorry, I'm focused on trying to get caught back up
here. So in prior versions, it would not, but I believe that has been addressed with the latest version. Actually, a few versions back, because I was running the SA Labs satellite server, and we did a lot of adding, removing, and sometimes they would not disappear. Hence why I got a very intimate relationship with the VAR file system because of it. Hopefully that helps, Carlos.
All right, so I think we're ready to move forward here.
Fantastic.
While you're answering Carlos's question, I was kind of just
Yep.
checking on a few things, and hopefully, yeah, it's supposed to be 2 hours. There's no way that I don't know why, but I spun up that environment like 15 minutes before our show, so we should have been fine. Oh, folks, the joy of live streaming. If you want to come back and watch the replay later, I'll make sure to put chapter markers in place so you can skip over all that, because now we're back into talking about content views. So we just created that RHEL 9 content view. And we added in the base OS, AppStream, and satellite client repositories. And you notice we've already got a bunch of packages. We've got green check marks. We're good to go. So now we'd created a non-prod and a prod stream. Now we need to start. Now we need to do what's called a publish. So we want to publish a new version because we don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just call it initial, if I can spell. And then we want to promote. So like Richard said, all packages are always available in library. But now we want to promote all of the packages in our repository into dev. Basically what that means is any system that you have registered and basically earmarked as a development machine will now see all the packages in our repository. The nice thing is, as you start into a patching cycle, you can promote packages. So if you've got 1.0.0, you can put that into dev. And once you're convinced that all of your dev servers didn't develop issues, all of your applications still run as expected, then you can promote that package, that 1.0.0 package into production.
Yeah.
And as you're doing your production patching cycle, you can actually be taking version 1.2.0 or whatever and pushing that into dev. And so you can be moving packages up through the chain as you get that testing taken care of. I should have clicked finish.
I figured we'd get there eventually.
All right, so this task is running, so we're going to go ahead and let that run. So it shouldn't take too much longer, but we can go ahead and move forward, and we'll come back and check on that task here in a minute. So now we've got a bunch of packages, and they're being published into a new content view. But that's not going to do us a lot of good unless we have some hosts to apply to these. Correct. So what we want to do is we want to open up our hosts, and I think there shouldn't. Yeah, the only system we have right now is the satellite server itself. So let's get us some clients. Now, if you run through the Instruct Lab, it's self-paced, and here you go. There's instructions. There's the link to the console, and then we've got RHEL 1 and RHEL 2 as clients. So on the satellite server, oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself. I was excited to show you the Instruct Lab. So before we can register any systems, we should probably have a way to register them, because if you're registering 500 systems, I don't want to put in my username and password. That's where activation keys come into play. So we're going to, still up in the content lifecycle, we're going to create an activation key. And this will somewhat automate the process of registering our systems with our satellite server. So let's create our activation key. We're going to be super specific here and call it RHEL 9. And then let's add all these systems to our non-production, to our development environment here. And we'll add this activation key will allow us to register any systems to our dev environment and apply the RHEL 9 content view that we're currently building. All this will make sense here in just a second.
Can I pause you there for a second before you move on?
Save me.
One more thing you can also do to make your life a little bit easier. You see where the section where it says release, says activation key, release variables, I believe. On the right-hand
left
side?
or right?
Right.
Sorry, I've got so many
Click
windows
there,
open. Mhm.
pull down, and now you selected RHEL 9. So you very specifically had told not just with the content, you telling it this is RHEL 9, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you should be expecting. And you can go further than that if this is production. If this is development, on the left-hand side, you can then put in, for example, the type of subscription they have. Is it a premium? Is it a standard? Is this development? Is this all the roles? They can be predefined here on the left-hand side for the host that will be consuming the subscriptions. So you're doing all those things that you do individually. You'll be doing it just by adding a subscription key. All these tasks are handled just by adding the subscription key when you register them. Okay, all yours.
All right, so we've got an activation key. This
Mhm.
will somewhat automate the registration process, whereas otherwise you'd have to put in a username and password for an account that had rights on the satellite server. But instead, we can give it an activation key, and then we're going to do one more thing. We're going to create a group because it's easier to manage systems on the group level than it is to manage 1,000 systems by hand.
Mm-hmm.
So under configure, we're going to create a host group.
Yep.
I'm going to create a group. And let's call this group like Rios was talking about. He suggested dividing up systems by workload. So we just got, let's have a generic application server group. And so if you've got multiple satellites or multiple capsules, you can actually select where that source is coming from.
Which is actually quite important. If you have multiple data centers or multiple locations, you want the one closest to, preferably the same location as your host, right? To lessen that latency and traffic that's going to generate. If it's 1,000 systems we're talking to the satellite server, you want that satellite or capsule to be as close as possible. So you can delineate, and it will always communicate to the one that they are set up to originally.
And just the same, we can get very specific here. So if we want this to be a dev group, we want it on RHEL 9. We can add in other things like OpenSCAP. We can have certain Ansible system roles run against any hosts that are in this group. But
Also
for now,
useful.
very useful. For now, we'll leave it at that. Now we've got an application server group. We've got our activation key. So we know where this client is going to live on our satellite system. And we've got the key to open the door. Pun intended. So now, my apologies, due to DNS limitations in the lab environment, we've got to do this part by hand. So we're going to jump into the satellite server itself, and we're going to paste this somewhat gnarly looking command, but we'll walk through it. It's not too bad. So Hammer is one of the underlying services that runs within satellite. The next is host registration. That's what we're going to do. And then a subset of that is we're going to generate basically a registration command that we'll then copy and paste into our clients. We created that application servers group. So we're going to specify what group this system should live in. We're going to ignore any SSL errors because this is a lab environment. And for now, we're going to skip setting up insights. But if you're running this in production or in a real environment, you should always register to satellite. Always. And then we're going to force the registration command because I think these are already, although something goofed.
Host group not found.
Application server. Did I just say application server? Nope. Application servers. This is why I copy paste. In fact, just in case I goofed up the spelling or something, let's do that.
All right.
I was just making sure you were paying attention, Rich.
Oh, no worries.
Missing activation key. Oh, yep. So what we're going to do is activation.
Key.
Activation key. And we called it what, RHEL 9?
I believe that was the name.
RHEL 9. Yep. Okay, so this should work. All
There
right.
we go.
So it spit out this even more gnarly looking command. But the nice thing is, all you have to do, highlight it, copy it, and then we're going to jump over to one of our client systems here
Mhm.
and paste it. So all this is going to do is it's going to pull down the registration information from our satellite server.
Mhm.
We've already given it an activation key, and it's going to run this as a bash script. And basically what it's going to do is going to change the target away from redhat.com to your satellite server, and then
It's
proceed
gonna
with
move the CDN,
registration.
basically. As far as that host is concerned, all future communications to Red Hat will be to the satellite server, not the internet based. And this is one of the ways you can have a like an air gapped environment through a satellite server, because it would handle all the communications and registrations and subscriptions, all those fun things through itself. All
So
right,
we have
looks good.
successfully registered RHEL 1. Now,
Hmm.
if we come over here and look at
Hosts.
hosts, we should have a brand new shiny system.
There we
Yes,
go.
we do. RHEL 9.4. It's in the dev environment, and notice that we've already got some errata that we could apply. We get some basic information about who registered it, the IP address, and once this kind of syncs, we'll have additional details.
Yes.
Anything from like what some of the hardware is, um, and we can go in and start making some changes here, or just update some display information. There's some integration between the client, satellite, and insights if we were to have set that up. But this really gives us a way to start managing our systems at scale.
Hmm. I mean, that's what really truly makes satellites so powerful. And if you're just doing it for one host, I mean, you can, but it's when you're doing
That's a lot of work for one host.
500 hosts, 1,000, tens of thousands, then it is such a time saver, because it's such a repetitive task that you're doing across just a fleet of hosts. You're able to do that. Just treat thousands as one.
And that's really easy to do with groups. We
Mhm.
are coming up on the top of the hour, and I do have a hard stop, but
Mhm.
I don't want to leave without kind of wrapping up this storyline here. Um, so what we've gone through today is we've gone in and we've created content views. We've set up our life cycle. So maybe you've got development, test, QA, staging, production. You can lay that out in a very logical order and add systems to the appropriate groups, get them access to the right packages. And then what's really nice is we can come in here and we'll be talking more about errata in our next episode.
Mhm.
But one of the key things is looking to see, are all my packages up to date? Do I have any that that need to be updated?
At this point, they do seem that way.
So, Rich, any closing thoughts on this? We didn't get as far as I was hoping, but I also didn't expect
No,
our two-hour
it's
lab environment to collapse after 30 minutes.
that this is the section a lot of people struggle with. It is so I stood it up, synced my content, but how do I register my hosts? How do I go about it? Uh, this what we just did. It's fairly straightforward. Could I automate this? Could you create a bash script to do this? Absolutely. Could I use Ansible as a tool to do this? To a fleet of hosts that I already have? Absolutely. Does it have to be a new host? No. It could be you could have been running RHEL for years and added a satellite infrastructure and then have it register and function in that fashion. Uh, it's very flexible in that space. It is truly meant to be a sysadmin's best friend, to make your life easier, to give you a single source of truth for you to move forward. I look forward to the next episode. Should be fun. And I hope you have a great vacation and you rest your voice.
I hope so too. So today, last episode, we installed satellite. This episode,
Hmm.
we created all of our content views. We pulled down all the repositories. We've basically got everything primed and ready. Now we're starting to register our systems. If I had a little bit more time, we'd walk through how to create a production group, and we were going to assign RHEL 2 to that group. And I was hoping to get as far as like deploying a package to these systems and promoting it through the process. Unfortunately, my daughter doesn't like to stay at school overnight by herself.
Yes. Just know to happen.
So in 2 weeks, we'll be back with episode 3, and that'll be the real meat. That'll be the core of what you do with Red Hat Satellite. We'll deploy packages. We'll look at errata, and we'll apply fixes to security vulnerabilities. The nice thing is, Rich and I have 2 weeks to prepare that example, and maybe I can fix the DNS issue in my home lab by then. But yeah, stay tuned in a couple of weeks for episode 3. Sincere apologies, folks, for the lab blowing up in the middle. They're supposed
This
to
proof that it's live, not canned.
Right. Yeah. This was not a canned demo, I promise. Meantime, Red Hat is actually closed tomorrow, so no Into the Terminal. And if you missed it, catch Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. Our episode was live yesterday. Nate Lager and myself interviewed Noah Chalaya, a longtime Linux enthusiast and fellow podcaster. Such great conversation.
Very good.
It was not technically deep at all, but it was really good conversation. It was great to catch up with Noah, a good friend of mine. So still plenty of content. Go out there and give the Satellite self-paced lab a try. We're using it now that it's publicly available. Rich and I are going to use it as the basis for the next couple of episodes. So if you want to work ahead, see what's going on, or if you're catching these episodes after the fact, you can go ahead and get your hands on with that Satellite Basics Lab. Definitely join Discord. We'll try and get like maybe a chat room or something set up in Discord for anybody who's going through this process with us. So definitely grab that Discord link over yonder, and subscribe to the channel. That way you know when our next episodes are scheduled. And until then, you probably won't hear anything from me because I'm going to try and unplug as much as possible. But Rich, thank you so much for bridging the gap there and helping me out through this episode and for signing up for the whole mini-series. We've got like 3 more episodes stuck with me.
Oh, this is fun. You know me. I'd love to talk about Satellite.
It's a great tool, and the live lab today didn't do it justice, but it is an amazing tool, and it just keeps getting better and better. Yeah. So on behalf of my guest, on behalf of my co-host Richard Rios, I'm Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and on behalf of ourselves and the entire Red Hat Enterprise Linux team, thank you so much for joining us live. I'm just going to keep hammering that home. Thanks for joining us live.
We did live.
And until next time, take care, and we'll see you around town.
Bye, everyone.